Hello guys, Kieran here with Explorminate, and welcome to the last video here for Cossacks 3, and this is going to be kind of the overview video. What's going to be going on in the background here is actually the second campaign mission, and I don't remember who it is. It's not the Turks, I'm thinking the Turks. The Tartars, there we are, thank you. Um, and it involves some fighting on a pretty large scale. You start out with a lot more units than you might on a default campaign, and also, at the very end, I will point out there is a few options it gives you with the campaign, which is kind of cool. I'll try to catch that as we go. But again, this is largely meant to be an overview video, kind of like what I did with the Ashes of Singularity Escalations. So we're going to focus kind of on the good, the bad, and the fun of the game, with me, mentioning certain, I guess, gameplay aspects as we go. So, Cossacks 3, I do. Let me start here, and I think this is a good place to start with the good. It was a game at first that I was kind of like, left a bad taste in my mouth. The more I played it, the more I gave it a chance, the more I did honestly enjoy that. Now, I'm not just saying that because, let's put a positive spin on this, to make someone happy. No, like, honestly, I started out and I was like, I'm going to play Age of Empires if I'm playing anything. The more I played this, the more I saw what set it apart. And, one of the things, as this is kind of demonstrated here, the army is just very big, and you can literally get just a ton of guys. I've never got like a 10,000 man army, and I probably won't. But if you want to put the time into this game and see that, be my guest. You very well could get just a ton of just units on the board, and they'll all die really fast. We'll get to that later. But the scale of it is fun. And it is enchanting in its own way. I think along with, talking about the scale, it's maybe similar to things like, classic RTS games, at least in my mind, like Age of Empires 2, or maybe like Age of Mythology are probably close to this, the closest. But it's its own thing, and it feels unique. One thing that I think is definitely a perk to it is the depth of the single-player campaign. Now, I think I touched a little bit if I didn't. There are some weaknesses with the single player, and that's largely just a result of how it was designed originally back in the day, right? But there's a lot there. So if you are a single player kind of person, especially with RTSs, I feel like that in itself can be a pretty good reason to consider looking into this game if you haven't already. There seem to be, I don't have the number right here. I'm going to say like 4, 5, 6 missions in the campaign at least, and there's a handful of campaigns, so you're easily looking over 24 missions that you can play, and it's something you could definitely sink some time into. Now, I did mention, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna, it's not gonna work to cover this in the moment with the video, but one thing you'll see later, towards the very end, the last 5 minutes about, is actually I get to make a choice. I will, spoiler alert, I think I can spoil this game, it's fine. You can actually take over the city, and then once you do so, you get to choose if you fight the final battle out on the field or in the town. I choose out in the field, which is probably stupid, but it was kind of awesome how it gave you that, and I do think the game deserves props, especially where it's based off something back from about 2001, that it gives you that option to play out. So it's not just a linear campaign where it is from mission to mission, right? But there is a few options it gives you. And for the weaknesses, which we'll cover in a little bit, the amount of content there is pretty impressive, especially by today's standards. I feel like campaigns, especially in strategy games, no matter what they are kind of go in the way of the dodo. Then that might be changing, but I know a lot of classic RTS players, just classic PC players, probably grew up, their bread and butter was the campaign before multiplayer was a thing. And that isn't to diminish the multiplayer, but just if you are looking for something you can boot up, play at your own leisure, save it, come back, great. This is a pretty good contender for that. Along kind of the same veins with it being, the bread and butter of the campaign, it plays like a classic RTS. If you enjoyed Age of Empires, if you enjoyed really any RTS of that era, any of them, Command and Conquer, whatever it might be, I think you'll like this. It's a little bit of nostalgia there, even though I didn't play the game, and that sounds weird to say, I think. It's the way the game plays, and that's something that I have not experienced on a new level in a lot of years. Even with newer things like, StarCraft 2 and things, that feels different. This is much more akin to the glory days, and I'll say Age of Empires 2 because that was my game. And as I've said repeatedly, this wasn't something I had played before. But if you like that old classic RTS feel, you'll be right at home. And then finally, the game looks pretty darn good. I don't think I show off any of the naval combat in these videos, but the ocean, the textures there look pretty neat. The landscape here, as you see, it's nothing amazing, but they've done a good job to make it look good. I know personally for myself, I'm kind of picky about graphics. I have a really hard time with indie games sometimes for that reason, because it's hard for me to get past something that looks, so-so. That's fine. Even if it has a great art, not art direction, but great gameplay. This, I feel like, it's not Dawn of War 3 caliber of graphics, right? But it's good enough to be enjoyable, where it's not detracting. So if that's something that's important to you, that's a definite strength with the game. And I did want to point that out, because I don't think I'm the only one out there. And, that isn't to disparage games that don't maybe have the production quality of other games. That's obviously not why you play them, to look at them. That's why you watch movies, maybe, right? Probably not even then, but that is, I think, something worth mentioning for the good. So, big armies, that really does pay off. It's going to be larger scale than other RTS games you're going to play. A lot of single player there. Plays like a classic RTS, and then the graphics. Those are a few of the bonuses there. A few of the good things. With the good, we know, comes the bad. While I did mention the campaign is a point of strength due to the depth of content there, especially if you're a campaign enthusiast, it does suffer from kind of scripted text. Maybe scripted text isn't the right word. You'll notice here there'll be little, like, a scroll pop up. It's all weathered. Looks like it's from the 1800s or whatever, right? And it's got some dialogue. You got to read it. Nothing's voice acted, which is fine. But I just, had a hard time getting into the couple campaigns I tried. Even more so than perhaps less than modern methods of telling story, which I don't think you can fault this game for too bad. It's just something to point out. There are moments of the campaigns that can get pretty dull. For example, I think I was playing the French campaign. It's not what it's called. It's not called the French campaign, but you know what I'm talking about. The first one, you're basically sailing a boat around. I timed it. I was doing a Let's Play video, and I was like, this is not working. It was like 12 or 13 minutes before you actually got to take control of troops. Before that, you literally had like a caravan, or not a caravan. It wasn't a, I don't know. It was a little bitty old ship, right? Sailing around from point A to point B, from point B to point C, and it was, like, we got to like E, F, or G or something at the point. And it's real time. You're just moving slowly. It's all in game. Move from the blue outpost to go deliver this message about the pirates to the teal outpost. Okay, we go over to the teal outpost. Great, thank you so much. Here's a ship. Quick, run this down to, the green outpost. Okay, still sailing around. And here I am, 8, 9, 12 minutes into this. That's literally what you're doing. And there's a lot of buildup for the engagements, which happen really quickly, as you're going to see here. I mean, we're 9 minutes into this campaign, and I've basically fought a few little skirmishes. We're going to attack a town here in a second. You can watch that, but that's something to be aware of. Don't... And it's not to say the campaign is terrible or anything. I'm not going there at all. It's just... go in with your eyes open. Don't expect this to be something it isn't, and expect some of the campaign moments to be a little duller than others. Well, I think I can say that without any level of guilt there. And again, not to say that it's designed poorly or it's not interesting or the battles aren't big, but just I think the biggest problem with the campaign that I've seen is the lack of base building. That's something to do normally. You're just moving around waiting for your troops to move, and that not being present in the campaign is a problem in some cases. Maybe problem's too strong a word, but it's definitely a deterrent. Another thing, and another portion of the bad there, and this is less of a bad and maybe of a lukewarm, right? It doesn't do anything different. You got formations, you got big battles, but it's, you know, if you're sitting there and you're like, all right, well, I only got money for one game. Am I going to buy something I'm familiar with or look for something new? I don't know if I could honestly recommend you go for this over something you might have grown up with, Age of Mythology, Age of Empires, if that's the case. And mind you, you probably have that because we live in the age of Steam sales, right? But for what it does different, I don't think it distinguishes itself enough necessarily, which I think can be said of any game, really. You look at 4X games, they copy a lot from each other. You look at shooters, they copy a lot from each other. It's a product of its time, that's fine. But it would be nice if there was a little bit, and this is probably me putting my own hopes and dreams on this game a little bit too much. A little bit more different. Great English. A little, just more diversity there. And that kind of goes into the other problem is I feel like unit diversity lacks. And so you end up just creating these big blobs of troops that are quite the same. Interestingly enough, I'm going to make the comparison to Ashes of Singularity. I feel like that has slightly more unit diversity in meaningful ways. Artillery, anti-air, and part of that again is you do have repair machines, you do have air units and stuff. This is 1800s, right? You basically have muskets and cannons. I understand historically you're held back. Little sidestep here. Look at all those guys attacking the horse. It's like everyone focuses on one horse and they go down and you keep moving. Anyways, we're moving in. That lack of unit variety means you're just kind of macroing up a bunch, just building a bunch of troops and then go with that. And for me, it's been a little bit less than satisfying. You know, pikemen, musketmen, a couple kinds of horses, a few cannons. Like that's really what it is. And the different factions, or I guess races are not factions, don't feel different enough to me to distinguish that. Which, you know, full disclosure there, I haven't played tons of this game, and so, you know, perhaps with time some of the slight differences will show themselves more, but it won't be to the level that I know personally would satisfy me. And not, again, to say, wow, this feature is missing, therefore this game is a, you know, a B minus or a C minus or anything like that, right? Because I'm not giving this a score or whatnot, but it's just something that is a damper for me. Again, I expressed, I think, a similar feeling with the lack of factions and Ashes. It's along the same veins there, you know. One way to improve the replayability of an RTS and things is to offer players more choices that I think they can make meaningful. And you know, there are the tiered units once you get to the higher age there that are stronger, but even then it feels more like an upgrade than a different unit. So I mean, there's those to mention, and those are more, I feel like, mechanical issues as opposed to a lot of the benefits, interestingly enough, are more like big picture benefits, right? But that doesn't mean the game itself lacks. Again, you know, I'm going to say that a lot in this video because I'm trying to give, the purpose of these is a pretty just cut and dry look at this is what the game does good, this is what it does bad. Maybe not bad, but not as strong, right? To give you an idea of if you want it or not, if this would be good for you, right? That's the full purpose of this. Our reviews, you know, our full-on written reviews, those break down the games a lot more detail. This is more just like, hey, here's some information. Because I know someone in the comments was like, hey, great series, I want to see everyone run this game. That's kind of the purpose with these. They're a lot more just, I guess, not just brushing the surface. We'll go with that. So that leads me into the very, very end here. And again, hopefully the good, the bad there give you an idea of just how the game would play. Because I know I've seen a lot of games that I mistook for something else, and that's on me as the consumer, not the game, right? The fun for it though, good old big battles. The battles are pretty fun. I wish you could have them more frequently, because I feel like they are too few and far between. But when you get those battles, they're just fun. Line up a bunch of guys, watch them die. With that, this game has the fastest time to death of like any RTS I've played. I mean, your units are squishier than a bunch of Zerglings sitting, waiting for siege tanks to rain death upon them. It's just like you, especially with cannons. My cannons don't get any good shots off here, but if they did, you just have like rows of guys dead, which is pretty accurate, right? For the time, especially. To everyone just stand up and die real quick. And so that's kind of fun with it. So the battle portion of it definitely plays off. And also, you know, formations at first I wasn't a big fan of. Oh, I'm moving the screen here. This is that choice I was referring to earlier, where I get to choose if I fight inside or outside the wall. So we're going to go fight outside in a second. But things like the formations, they're different, but I like them. I know there's that numerical requirement I covered earlier. I don't remember those. I'm not looking at it. It was like, you know, it kind of doubled and such. It's kind of fun though, and it's a good way to control the troops. And it was a really forward-thinking way of doing it with RTS. Again, in 2001, you have to think like, that's a pretty nice way to control things. Especially with these sheer amount of troops, it worked quite well. So, and I think that's basically fully encompasses the fun version of it is the fighting. RTS games by default pretty much are warmonger games, right? You might have a little diplomacy, but let's be honest, basically you're just gonna get the other guy before he gets you. And this game does that very well, definitely. As we're going to see here in a second. This last fight, actually, I'm just like, I was pretty sure I was going to lose it, but I was like, well, we're 20 minutes in. This is a pretty good, for an overview video. It's interesting enough to watch if my boy, if I'm losing in there. And the stupid gate didn't open, and so everyone walked around. I was like, whatever. Anyhow. So there it is, guys. There's Cossacks 3. The good, the bad, and the fun. So just to recap again, you know, some of the strengths, some of the good things, big armies. If you can get up there, they're going to be big. And you know, some folks in the comments pointed out to me, you know, building multiple city centers is a way to get around that. Wasn't aware of that, haven't taken the chance to explore that. But you know, big armies are possible without, you know, ridiculous amounts of time. It seems like it is a little slower than I'd like, but you can get those big armies, right? A lot of single player there, so for especially old school single player fans, got you covered. Plays like a classic RTS, and the graphics are pretty darn good. Again, a few of the weaker points of the game. The campaign has its slow moments. It's texture driven, and then you know, just personally there, I feel like the lack of the unit variety was a little bit of an issue. Not tons, but something worth mentioning. And then, of course, the fun, good old battles. And that's where we're going to leave it here. We're actually just going to sign off here in a moment, and I'm not going to narrate this battle, but I'm just very grateful that I won, because otherwise that would be a terrible way to end this. Like, yeah, so lots of, here comes the blue tide, first the red tide, red versus blue. And here we have it. So those are my final impressions of Cossacks 3. Let me know what you think. And check out the game. I mean, it's been fun. Like I said, I want to emphasize it's something that grew on me. While I had my early hesitations on it, the game definitely ended on a much higher note than my initial impressions. So if you have it, give it a chance. If you haven't broken out, spend a couple hours with it, see what you might find, and I think you might be pleasantly surprised. That's the game. That's my impressions. And again, as always, appreciate you watching. Check back. We have stuff going up all the time on YouTube, on our site. But as always, we just appreciate your support. And that's why we do this. So catch catch you next time. And as always, thanks so much.